Laurie.
Thank you, Gary. Welcome, everybody. This is a gathering of people who are concerned about an issue that we all hoped wouldn't be on the headlines again or in our hearts again. Unfortunately, as everyone here knows, the rise in anti-Semitism has been rapid recently and broad and sadly becoming normalized. We see it everywhere. I am focused only on, or primarily on, anti-Semitism that's happening in education. And first came to everyone's attention on the campuses. We started seeing incidents of Jew hatred and Jewish state hatred about 2 decades ago. Slowly, I believe I started seeing it in California first, San Francisco in particular, which, by the way, the Bay Area in California is really still ground zero, although it's spreading quickly and coming to theaters near everyone. It was something that people paid attention to some extent until it started spreading further and further. The Deborah Project, which, as Gary said, we represent Jews facing discrimination in education, we began actively prosecuting cases in 2016. The big issue then was BDS, boycott, divestment, and sanctions, and that was really on the college campuses for the most part. But in 2022, we began to see an organized effort at indoctrinating American students in K-12 with anti-Semitism. And that's terrifying. I have seen curricular materials that was professionally created for pre-K to 3rd grade, 4th through 6th, 7th through 12th. And it is spreading, as I said, infiltrating the schools. Largely, the vehicle is the teachers' unions in K-12. And of course, we see it on the college campuses with the Students for Justice in Palestine playing a leading role as a leading villain, along with Jewish Voice for Peace and a few other organizations that have some of the same players, but certainly have a lot of the same materials and the same missions, which is to normalize anti-Semitism, to normalize hatred of Jews and the Jewish state, and to rewrite history so that Jews are the colonizers, the occupiers, the outsiders illegally present in Israel, and the Palestinians, which of course were never a people and never was a nation, now are recognized almost everywhere as a legitimate separate ethnic group. And it really is true, as we learned from World War II and the Nazis, that if you repeat a lie often enough, it becomes the truth. It is now, it's gone from the Arab-Israeli war to Israel-Palestine. And as you saw in the United Nations, of course, which is dominated by the Islamic organizations of countries, Israel is a pariah and is being told it has no right to self-defense. I mean, we're in a whole lot of trouble. So I'd like to share with everyone here the information that I have, and I'd like to talk a little bit about the laws that apply. When I see eyes glazing over, I'll flip over into a discussion of what's happening in K-12 and on college campuses, what the differences are, And I'll give you some examples. One K-12 case that I have now or about to file, and another one in a college campus that we have already filed. And I think going through what the students there have gone through and then telling you what the response of the administration in each instance has been will be helpful. And then I want to end with a list of things that I think everyone here can do, because I know it's enlightening to hear someone with solid information that you may not have, but it's really important to end a conversation with action items. So I'm going to share my screen. I can do it. There it is. Yep. Okay. So this is the truth. This is a true statement. We are under siege. Everyone who's come here tonight already knows that and is telling everyone they know that we need to do something. So what can we do according to what legal tools do we have to fight what's happening? And the First Amendment is a help to us and is used as a sword against us. What I have seen in the cases that I'm working on, and I have about 16 active cases right now, which is crazy. What we see is that the First Amendment is respected when it comes to criticizing Jews in the Jewish state. Oh, that's free speech. They're allowed to say that. I've had principals of schools say, oh, our legal department said that's covered by free speech. I will tell you now and later and probably a third time again, because I really want everyone to know this. In public schools in the United States, K through 12, teachers do not have free speech rights in the classroom or anywhere where they are performing their professional responsibilities. That's a mind-blowing statement to me as a lawyer. I know it is jarring to hear that, but it happens to be the truth. And it's, you know, as people who love the First Amendment and free speech, we have to recognize that it is being used as a tool against us. And you have to feel comfortable telling teachers and principals and superintendents and the PTA and everyone you know, no, the teacher can't say that in the classroom. It is not his or her free speech rights to say that Israel is an apartheid state or that Palestine is a country in the Middle East bordered by Jordan, Lebanon, and Egypt, which are slides that say those things. I've seen them used as teaching materials in classrooms. So that's really important. That's obviously federal law. It's the U.S. Constitution. In every state, the state constitution has something similar. And when we practice anti-Semitism law or battling anti-Semitism in education, Title VI is something that everybody knows about. But before I get into what Title VI, not everybody knows about it, okay? Most people who follow this closely or know someone or themselves have claims of anti-Semitism against an educational institution are aware that Title VI of the Civil Rights Act is what governs discrimination in education. So Title VII is discrimination in employment. Title IX is with respect to sex and gender now. And Title VI is education. Everybody thinks that's the answer. That's what you need to wield if you're going to bring an anti-Semitism case. Maybe, maybe not. But I will tell you that state anti-discrimination laws and local anti-discrimination laws are often more robust than Title VI is. And I say that because they cover more categories, and those more categories include us, the Jews, because, believe it or not, Title VI does not include religion as a protected category, so that race is a protected category, and gender is, and national origin is, and ethnicity is, but not religion. So for a long time, Jews didn't bring Title VI claims because they thought they weren't covered. Now that we are in the battle of our lives, and people in the space where I practice, we are trying desperately to change the civil rights legislation and litigation landscape to include protection for the rights of Jews. And slowly, we're beginning to get there. One way we have begun to get there is through the use of the IHRA working definition of anti-Semitism. Maybe we can talk about that later. It's a really, really important tool, and it's only as important as the ability to wield it, and you can't if your own jurisdiction hasn't adopted it. So every school, every township, every county, every state, every country, and there are dozens and dozens and dozens, hundreds of places that have adopted it, but not all have. And when a municipality or a school district or a state has not adopted the IHRA definition, it becomes much harder to make a claim of that anti-Zionism is part of anti-Semitism. So it's a two-step problem that we have. Both religion is not included in Title VI, and anti-Zionism has not traditionally been recognized as a form of anti-Semitism. So it's tough. We have a lot to overcome, but we are. And cases were just beginning to be filed post October 7th, when we've all been hit with a tsunami of hatred. And we are beginning to see rulings from courts, a number of which have been quite positive for us, little glimpses of hope. But these are just preliminary stages of cases. So we don't have, we only have the lowest court level that has ruled on these anti-Semitism claims. I'm sure everyone on the call is aware, at least, and actually it's so strange that MIT, the same judge ruled on the anti-Semitism claim at MIT and granted the motion to dismiss, saying, no, you haven't made out a Title VI claim. And at Harvard, the same judge said, we're going to deny the motion to dismiss, which means the case can go forward because you have made out a claim. And there are peculiarities of the cases. The MIT one was disappointing, the ruling, because the judge said, yes, the administration took action, although it was ineffective, but they couldn't have known that the students wouldn't adhere to the strictures and prohibitions and requirements that the school enunciated. I don't quite get that. I think it was pretty obvious that those people who are protesting the right of Jews to live and breathe and glorifying the murder and slaughter of Jews were not going to listen to what the administration said. But that's what happened. In the Harvard case, I think one distinguishing factor, and I hope it's not solely this factor that judges rely on, in the Harvard case, there was physical assaults. It's pretty hard to deny harm to students when they've been physically assaulted. And there was also a very good, really astoundingly good ruling in a case brought against UCLA, where the judge, I mean, it was amazing. He just said, nope, 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 this, you have violated, this is in America, you can't do this. And this that was done was the Students for Justice in Palestine and their buddies were preventing Jews from entering school buildings like the library because they asked people if they were Jewish, and if so, they were barred. So that's pretty straight discrimination. And of course, every other case is going to fall somewhere in between. Now you have the title, let's go back to Title VI, because that is where most of the cases, that's how they're being brought. And the way Jews have begun to be covered is in shared ancestry or ethnic characteristics. So as Jews, our shared ancestry is in, every single one of our holidays, our calendar, our daily prayers, everything is centered around Zion, Israel. And so that you can make out the claim that people have a shared ancestry connection to the Jewish state and therefore are covered under Title VI. And it's pretty extraordinary, but that's how we've gotten in there. And, we're acting like the NAACP Legal Defense Fund was doing in the 30s and 40s and up until the 50s, when they began to win cases and have clear precedent, and a path. Right now, we're digging, we're making the path. It's not created yet. So, and I wanted to share with you, because I did a little research for you all today and found two pretty astounding cases, very recent cases, one in which, and maybe because it's in the First Circuit, which Massachusetts is part of, that a student was told he couldn't wear a shirt. There was speech on his shirt that was prohibited. That's wild, but that's what the court, not just the district court, but the Court of Appeals upheld that, which is pretty astounding. And although, as someone who believes in free speech and the First Amendment, for our purposes, and I do have to bifurcate here, for our purposes, this is an important case for us, because what we're seeing in the schools, Palestinian flags and stop the genocide and all kinds of positive things for the haters, and anger directed at the Jewish students, which is oppressive. And so it's amazing, but the First Circuit did actually rule this. And since this case was passed, this is precedent in the First Circuit, which is the northern eastest part of the country. And it's a blow for free speech, but I'm going to use it when I can. And then here's another one that is really quite astounding. Maybe not for you, but for me, who I practice in this area. And generally, when teachers posted things on social media on their own private accounts, it was anything goes. So the real vicious, nasty social media posts by some teachers who are haters of Israel and Jews, that's just free speech. They can say whatever they want. It doesn't hurt anyone. But now we are finding, and of course it's not in the context of Jews, but it was because a teacher posted on TikTok, believe it or not, stuff that was homophobic and transphobic and considered to be racist. But if they're going to say that social media statements may not be protected by the First Amendment, that's another huge tool for us, because we really are getting beaten up on social media and by teachers of public school kids, and for sure by professors on campuses. So those are two huge things. And I'm going to share the pages that the documents that I'm sharing now. I'm going to send them to the leadership of MAST, and they can share it with anyone who wants to have copies of this. It's, it's the real crib sheets, but I think that the cases are really interesting. And I try to use summaries so that you don't have to wade through boring legalese. Okay, so now I'm going to compare the two, or not compare, I'll go through K through 12 in colleges and universities and what the differences are. So as I said, I told you I was going to say this more than once in this webinar. There are no free speech rights for teachers in public school classrooms. And again, I did find a case in the First Circuit that says that as well. There has not been a single case that was brought to a court of appeals that found that teachers had complete free speech rights in the classroom, and that they're able to talk about their own political views and indoctrinate students in their own dogma. So the First Circuit is also part of this. I think there are at least 8 different circuit courts of appeal that have this position, and that's really huge. Try it. Try to discuss it. And actually, I have in that 1-pager or 2-pager before, you can look and see, what the basis is for it. So, you're standing on solid ground. Something that parents of K-12 students frequently say is, it's not the school district. I don't have a problem with the school district, or I don't want to sue the school district. Those are my taxpayer dollars. But it's the union that's the problem. And I know that the teachers union in Massachusetts is very problematic in this regard. But as a general matter, unions are not liable. Why? Because when the union is talking to its members, they are speaking not in the classroom. They are speaking to fellow professionals, and they do have free speech rights there. The problem arises when a teacher discusses these matters and says these problematic issues and uses problematic material in the classroom. That you can go after. You can't go after pure speech, which is what, for the most part, the unions are engaging in. So it's a general statement. There are some exceptions, but not many. And another issue that I think I hear all the time from parents is, well, I want to see what they're teaching my kids, but the teachers won't give me the materials, and their principals are backing them up. Most states, education law by and large is governed by state law. Most states have education codes that include the right of parents to access to the classroom, the right of parents to either view or have copies of curricular materials, the right to meet with your teacher, the child's teacher, the principal, the right to volunteer in the classroom. So there are rights that parents have that most people aren't aware of, and if they were aware, would be exercising, and they aren't yet. So those I think, are the highlights. The problematic areas that I've seen, the curriculum or instructional material. Make sure when you ask for it, you ask with the right words, because I know, at least in California, the materials that you are entitled to is described as instructional material, and it covers everything that's used in the classroom, including videos and handouts that a teacher may have taken from a website. I don't know what the magic words are in Massachusetts or whichever state you all are in, or some of you are in, but that matters, because they can say, here's the curriculum, but it doesn't cover the problematic materials. The walkouts, there were walkouts for Gaza. I think they've quieted down, but I'm sure, sadly, with October 7th coming, we will see more of that. There's a lot of politicizing what is happening, and what we see is very often it is animated by and encouraged by and actually set up by teachers or teachers unions or community organizations. It's not really coming directly from the students, because you can see the very polished posters that are put up, or billboards that people carry. And so you should really push teachers and principals about what is driving these walkouts or demonstrations or rallies against Israel. Political symbols is another issue that comes up often. Is it okay for teachers to wear a pin that says Free Palestine? Is it okay for teachers to hang in their classrooms, from the river to the sea, Palestine will be free? Is it okay for teachers to have in their classroom the maps of every, or the flags of every country, including Palestine, which is not a country, but not Israel? Are those things okay? Those, again, this is a fact-specific question. You have to look and see what the particular board policies are in your district. There may be case law on it. It's state specific. And again, the student free speech, it used to be recognized that students, even if not teachers, but students really have a very robust free speech right. And as we saw in the case of the student with there were only two genders t-shirt, that's really being cut back. So again, that works both ways. And we have to use whatever we have to fight against the anti-Semitism and Jew hatred in the schools.
Laurie, just
yeah.
nothing is showing on the screen. I don't know if you wanted to share anything or not, but it's just you speaking at this point. So
it says I am screen sharing.
it just, what I'm looking at, it just says it's cut off, and it just says the Deborah, and nothing else is on my screen, and somebody reconfirmed it. So I just want to, before
Okay, well, that's definitely a problem. I don't know what the problem is, because it does say, tells me I'm screen sharing. So I don't know, maybe if I stop share and I'll go back.
If it doesn't, we'll just wing it. That's okay.
Yeah, for sure.
Maybe when you move from one location to the other, something got moved.
Is it there?
It's there. Thank you. Sorry about that.
No, thank you for telling me. It still says on screen sharing, so I don't know. All right, if that happens again, please let me know. So I don't know when you didn't see, but as I said, I will make this material available, and we can talk about it in the questions following the presentation. So here's a case now. the S blank blank SD because I haven't filed it yet. It will be filed this week or next, I guess next week. And it's a case of a school district in California where I began to hear problems. First, I heard from a family that told me their daughter, 10th grade daughter's world history teacher, was giving very biased information about the Middle East, the history of the Middle East, and then after October 7th, really got into it and started a unit that he inserted, which began with Israel's assault on Gaza, not with October 7th. And the dad called me, we'll call him Sam because that's his name. He called me and he said that his daughter was very upset about what was happening in her class. And she raised her hand and said, well, didn't something happen on October 7th before Israel went into Gaza? And he kind of poo-pooed, yes, that's right. But now look what's happening. And it followed with lots of very, very biased information or non-information, misinformation throughout the course. And he also ridiculed this one Jewish daughter, saying things like, oh, Mary, which is not her name, Mary thinks Israel is not an apartheid state, but maybe you all will learn better here. And it was extremely problematic. So I started with that family and we continued, and the dad tried very hard to get the materials. And that's a very long process, trying to get curricular materials. So often when there are problematic materials, they stonewall. And the teachers say, no, we're not giving it to you, or you have whatever there is to give out, and we don't need to give you the source material. And it turns out that this teacher was using material from Amy Goodman, PBS, and let's see, she has a podcast, Democracy Now!, and he used a segment that had Peter Beinart and another, I can't remember this, as an Israeli professor at, I think, Bard. The topic was the weaponization of anti-Semitism. And what they did was discuss the hearings of the 3 college presidents before Congress, and they gave their opinions, which are their opinions, they're entitled to them, but that's how the teacher presented the topic. So there was no room for any nuance. Generally, if there are controversial topics, most education codes require that you have a balanced presentation. There was no balance whatsoever. Then I began to hear about other students in the school district, one of whom was, or several of whom were called the K word, and complained and nothing happened. There was a teacher, a substitute teacher, who, when she learned that one of the kids in the class had a grandfather who hid during the Holocaust, she thought that was an appropriate time to announce that she had some Holocaust jokes to share. And she did, to the class. And this is in middle school. Yeah. And then October 7th happened, and there were swastikas that were etched into the ground. And when some Jewish students complained about it, the principal took 2 days and announced that there had been an investigation with the sheriff's office, and that in fact they aren't swastikas, they're Japanese anime. And the student who did it is not native to the United States, is an immigrant, and wouldn't understand what swastika is. So it's not something we need to be concerned about. We're very happy that it wasn't anti-Semitism. Well, the parents didn't let go, and it turns out that actually there was no sheriff's investigation because we filed Records Act requests with the sheriff's office, and they had no record of any call or any investigation into possible swastikas at the school. And the parents could not understand why a principal would cover this up. And so their antenna went up. And there were so many different problems in this school district. And it began to come out. And we have a group of 7 different families that are about to file a lawsuit against this school district and the teachers and principals and superintendents and the school board members for allowing so many incidents to go on without effective recourse. And the parents filed internal complaints and they were dismissed, and students were told, well, you can change your classroom, meaning the Jewish child is the one who is punished rather than the bad actors or the teacher. And it'll be an interesting case to see what's going to happen. We're in California, which is a notoriously progressive state, obviously. It's in the Bay Area. We don't know what a judge there will do, but our option was to tell the families we can't risk bringing a case that we'll lose, or representing them to the best of our abilities. So that's what we're doing. And what I want to tell people, parents, is that you need to ask your children for the handouts from their class. And you need to ask to see whatever it is that they're reading and seeing in class, or what videos they've seen, and look them up. I know it's intrusive. I know, particularly high school kids, the answer to what happened in school today is always nothing. But this is on you. You have to do it because we need to get the materials, and the schools need to know that the parents are paying attention and are not going to be fobbed off with we're free speech, or these are teachers, they know what they're doing, they're the educators, they are justified in what they're doing. No, they're your kids, and you need to take responsibility because we're essentially in a war zone, and you can't just let it go by or hope that someone else will do it. And again, I want to remind people that a lot of the really bad stuff is curricular or instructional material that is produced by anti-Israel organizations funded, by the way, by entities in the Middle East, some of which are terrorist organizations. I'm not kidding. This is real. I have seen this. I see it from the people doing the analysis. It's very professionally done. It's high quality, and it's going to create an entire generation of both frightened Jews and Jew-hating non-Jews. So that's on parents. Parents, please tell your children to make sure to pay attention to this. And so that's it for K to 12 for the presentation, but I'm obviously happy to discuss any of this afterwards. Okay, colleges.
Thank you so much, Laurie. That was fantastic.
Oh,
Yeah.
good. All right. So now I'm going to talk about the colleges.
Yeah, sure.
And here it's the teachers really do, professors really do have free speech rights, but what we see on the campuses now is it's strictly enforced. That is, most harmful speech is permitted under the guise of free speech, but not when, I mean, microaggressions or using the wrong pronouns. I mean, those are policed heavily. So it isn't true to say you are just following free speech guidelines. We are entitled to be treated the same way every other group is. This is differential treatment. This is discrimination against Jews. Again, the walkouts, there are physical attacks on the college campuses. I actually do have a case of a middle school child, an Israeli Jewish child, who was physically attacked repeatedly during the school year last year. And guess what? The district has to pay that child's private school education from 7th through 12th grade because they screwed up. They allowed this child to be harmed repeatedly. But there certainly are far more physical attacks on the campuses, and we just heard about it at the University of Michigan, and it happened at Harvard and at Rutgers, and we talked about the barring Jews from certain places that happened at UCLA, and the encampments and sit-ins cause people, Jewish students, to alter their path. They can't walk through campus the same way they otherwise would. And so they have to think about where the haters are going to be and how they can protect themselves. That's part of what creates a hostile environment. If I have to do something as a Jew that non-Jews don't have to do in order to partake of the educational opportunities at school, then I am suffering from a hostile environment. And if the administration doesn't respond appropriately, if they exhibit, the magic words are deliberate indifference, then you have a good claim for a hostile environment on campus. That's a violation of Title VI. Holding viciously anti-Israel and anti-Semitic events on campus. That's another, we just saw it in spades last year, just across the campuses, and we're beginning to see it already now. I don't understand why more entities, more educational institutions aren't putting rules in place to prevent masking if students don't otherwise mask. And a suggestion that I made to one school that we sued is that any student who has a medical issue, and there are students who actually have medical issues, they have to register with the campus and use a campus mask, one that's distributed by the campus and numbered. So they are protected, but they are still identifiable because these kids are absolutely emboldened. It's like they're acting out social media because they're hidden. They're doing the same things, kinds of things, levels of things that people do online because you're not accountable. Well, to me, that's what masking is. It allows non-accountability, and that is a real serious problem and one that's easily fixed. So the encampments, the courses, and the books on campuses, they're just unbelievable. The proliferation of Jew hatred courses and teachings and events and seminars is horrific. And if you have college students, you need to ask them to please tell you about this, and you need to discuss with them why it's important that the school not get away with it. And I know that's a really tough sell. I have that constantly with people, students who are prepared to complain, and that's a huge step for them. But when we say, well, you have a good case, let's go to court, their response is fear. And I get it. I really get it. But my husband, with whom I practice in the Deborah Project, he used to lose his mind when kids would say that and say, there are 19-year-olds in Israel who are on the border with Gaza getting shot at, and you're afraid of telling people that you're entitled to enforce your rights. That's we need to have our kids be bolder about this. And the other side, the other teams, are very good at screaming and yelling and breaking things. And so they get their ways very often because they intimidate the administration, or it's just easier. It's the old, squeaky wheel issue. And so we need to find ways of emboldening the students. And one of the ways we've found in the legal world is to create unincorporated associations and to sue on behalf of the associations of students who are not identified, at least initially, but their experiences are included so you can make out a claim. And that's a whole effort to overcome the fear, but it's difficult to overcome. Now, Haverford College is a college that we sued first in May and then just filed an amended complaint a week or two ago. And this is it's a small liberal arts college. There are only 1,400 students. It's a selective school. It's in a consortium with Bryn Mawr College and Swarthmore. And it's become incredibly rife with anti-Semitism and some real leading awful figures on campus who are charismatic and or are simply followed by students who think it's now cool to hate the Jews. So many horrible things happened during the course of the year. One thing was Apartheid Week, which has been on campuses for a very long time. But at Haverford's Apartheid Week last year, they showed the movie Janine Janine, which villainized the IDF when they went into Janine. And even the director of the film has said there are a lot of inaccuracies in the film, but that's something that they showed. They also had one night they had a discussion about how the Israeli government was using COVID to infect the Palestinians. This is taught at a college. And another night featured a reading of part of a book by a professor, Jasbir Puar, who wrote a book about maiming, the right to maim. And that's about the theory written as fact is that Israel maims many, many Palestinians rather than kill them so that they would have a population to subjugate. I mean, it's just really crazy stuff, just vicious. There was one Jew who begged the administration, the president of the college, please come out with a more sympathetic, empathic statement about October 7th. What was issued instead was something that compared October 7th to natural disasters like earthquakes and volcanoes and hurricanes. And the response of the administration was, well, nobody's happy with what we say, so we're not going to do anything further. And one Jewish student, a female student, said, okay, if you're not going to talk about it, I'm going to. And she set up her own teach-in, which was the Students for Justice in Palestine kind of ambushed her, and they put up posters all over before she started, and it scared away all the Jewish students. That particular young woman, her name is Allie Landau, and she is our named plaintiff. She wanted to have she's a scholar athlete. She's an amazing young woman and very brave. She wanted to have one of her basketball games dedicated to anti-Semitism awareness. Nothing about Israel, just anti-Semitism awareness. Just hand out the little blue squares and some material. And although she was initially given permission, the dean of the college a week before called her in and said, I think that the students who protest are likely to protest, and if they flood the court and won't get off, then your team will have to forfeit. And do you want that on your shoulders? And so she ended up canceling a table outside of the basketball game, which had little blue squares and some pamphlets, because the haters might act out and act up and not be stopped by security, which is their responsibility. And so again, the Jewish student who is compliant and follows rules, she had to cancel the anti-Semitism awareness. There were so many horrible, horrible things. What a professor of math posted right after October 7th, celebrating, and it was a picture of what are those earth movers called? I can't remember. Like a steam shovel? I don't know what. Breaking through the fence on their way to go slaughter and murder the Jews. And everyone else they found in the kibbutzim and at the Nova Festival. And he's celebrating that. And when some Jewish students asked the president of the college, why did she think that was anti-Semitic? She said, well, there are different ways of interpreting it. And when they asked her, well, what's your way? She said, well, I see people breaking free of their chains. So that's the president of the college. So there are just so many awful examples and so many opportunities for the school to take action and stop the harassment. And that didn't happen. So we believe it's a clear example of deliberate indifference on the part of the college. And, we'll wait and see what happens with that. But those are the kinds of things that we're seeing on the campuses and the kinds of action that we can take. I do have another page, but I could just give that out. I think I've talked for a really long time, and maybe there are questions that
Yeah, there are a lot of questions coming in, Laurie.
So let's do that.
Yeah, sure. That sounds fantastic. So let's take it from the top here. So here's a question. Can a teacher be fired? We're talking about higher education for pointing out things like Palestinian flags being hung by students.
Can a teacher be fired for pointing out that students are hanging Palestinian flags?
Yes.
Certainly. Well, who are they pointing it out to? Is it to the administration?
Administration, yes.
No, I mean, how could that possibly be a fireable offense? It may be that it's not impermissible to fly the Palestinian flags, but it can't be a basis for dismissal.
Okay. This one is coming in terms of teachers having no free speech rights, which we said several times. What about liberated ethnic studies curriculum?
So that was the first case that the Deborah Project brought in Los Angeles in May of 2022 against the Liberated Consortium. And what that has for people who don't know is both a lot of, well, let me step back. Ethnic studies is supposed to be the expanding information about formerly marginalized ethnicities. So African Americans and Native Americans and Hispanic and Chicanos and Asian American Pacific Islanders. Those are the four groups that are supposed to be covered in ethnic studies. It's about to become law in California that you have, every graduating student, in order to graduate, has to have had at least one course in ethnic studies. The liberated ethnic studies is a version created by radical, progressive, leftist, Leninist, Marxist followers. Honestly, they will say this themselves. That's who they are. And they are interested and intent on educating students both in all kinds of ways that America is evil and bad, but also they have a special little section of their curriculum called Teach Palestine, and it is utter villainization of Jews in the Jewish state. And the liberated ethnic studies model is metastasizing throughout the United States, and the organized, the educators in the Coalition for Liberated Ethnic Studies is all over the country now, and I know it's in Massachusetts, and we're litigating against it. The problem is we need to have students in classrooms who have this horrible material taught and are harmed. We brought our case before we could show harm because, God damn it, we were not going to wait for Jewish kids to be harmed before we bring a lawsuit. So we tried to be creative and inventive and did bring a case, and the judges has not ruled on it yet. But once you start getting the materials and you can prove that it's taught in a classroom, not just that the union members are talking about it and insisting on their right to teach it, but that it's actually in the classroom, you sue those people.
Thank you. Are state university professors subject to the same classroom rules as public school teachers in grades K to 12, or is there a difference?
There is a difference. There's a difference because the case law was developed precisely because K to 12 kids have to be in the classroom. They are a captive audience. It's against the law for them not to be present, and their parents can be penalized if the kids are absent. That's not the case in the community colleges and public colleges. Students can still choose not to take a particular class. So it's not the same, but public universities are more liable and vulnerable to discrimination law than are private universities and colleges. However, Haverford College, for example, is a private college, and we said Haverford College, Harvard is, MIT is, Cornell is. All these institutions are private institutions, and yet they receive federal funding, a lot of it. And so they are subject to federal law, federal anti-discrimination laws.
Now, do the laws apply to social media also, as a follow-up question? Is that all part of the classroom scene if a teacher then takes to social media to...
It's just begun to be recognized that it's problematic. It was until very, very recently. Social media was considered private speech, particularly completely if it's your own private account and not a school account, or not something where the teacher is providing classroom materials or homework or something on their social media accounts. We've just begun to see a turn, and it's mostly not because Jews are being harmed, but some of the favored minority groups are being harmed on social media by teachers. And so, but the courts cannot say, oh, we're going to protect this group, but not that group.
Okay,
So
great.
that's a real sea change. It's very recent.
Somebody was sharing a personal experience with their daughter who's attending school, and what's happening is one of the teachers is saying not to support a business that supports Israel, which is like almost every Jewish business owner. So they're just wondering how they could deal
In
with
the
it.
classroom, if that was said in the classroom, I would absolutely go to the principal about that
Okay, so you
for
would.
sure. Oh, yeah. Yeah, you don't get to do that. That's political speech that is not appropriate in the classroom.
Okay. Why are verbal threats toward Israel and Jews, assaults considered free speech on campus, even though it's illegal on the street?
Well, free speech is recognized on the street. Assaults are not okay on the campuses. Why are you saying that it is? I
That's
don't.
yeah, that's what
I,
they're saying.
well, if there's a place where that's happened and it's been allowed, let me know about it. Because no one has a license to hurt Jews. That's just not the case, at least not physically.
Okay, then it says if we want to agitate for no masking rules, I think that I don't know if that is the right word, but I think maybe advocate. What First Amendment opposition has this been met? For instance, with doxing, the protesters may claim that losing right to mask chills their right to speech due to the concern of doxing.
Too bad. You're going to take action. You suffer the consequences, you cowards. I mean, forget about it. No, absolutely not. If you want to protest the right of Jews to live and breathe, you go out there and you do that and you suffer the consequences if there are any. No way. The only legitimate response that I've seen is that there are people who actually need to wear masks and they're embarrassed to have to register or something like that. And that is, I think, something that can be worked out. That is a rare situation, and I think it should and could be worked out. But otherwise, forget about it.
Okay, Duke University Press published PUAR. Despite pushback, the material was never rescinded. President Price said the book should be evaluated in the court of public opinion.
What is that?
How do we deal with that? What's the book
That's the book that I was talking about. The Right to Maim is the name of the book, and
Okay.
it's Jasper Puar is the author. And it was used as a resource or recommended reading in a course at Princeton University last year. It's vile. It's really, truly, I mean, this person, Jasper Puar, there's a constellation of really awful people at Rutgers University. And by awful, I mean truly Jew hating and Israel hating. In my opinion, that's awful. And they just all support each other. And it is trendy to hate on the Jews. So, that's the court of public opinion. Shame on Duke University for publishing such tripe. It's grotesque. It really is grotesque. And, the professors across the country who are leading these demonstrations and encampments and these absurd events, hateful events, of course they're going to use her book. They're supporting her. And so, just, that's like saying Mein Kampf, it's a popular book. It must be okay. That's ridiculous.
Okay, next question. If we want to advocate for hate speech rules at K to 12 schools wherein hate speech requires a response of intense remedial education, How do we deal with objections from the ACLU that speech is being chilled?
Well, it's interesting. The ACLU filed an amicus in the case that I mentioned earlier about the student who had political speech on his T-shirt. And I was really curious, but didn't have the time to check yet, which side they were on in that, because they are free speech advocates, but they're also, in my opinion, uber woke, and so shut down other speech, I think. And so there are already, that train has left the station. There are so many restrictions on speech now. Sexual harassment changed things. The civil rights laws changed things. You can't raise that free speech right now only when we're talking about Jews. And so if you're going to allow the requirement that no one uses the N-word and no one misgenders people and no one uses the wrong pronouns, God damn it, you better say it's fine to prohibit people from calling for the annihilation of the Jewish state. And if not, be prepared to be called a hypocrite, because that's what you are.
Okay, great. The questions are rolling in. Most colleges and universities have rules, regulations, and policies that set standards for their students that will protect their students from harassment, intimidation, and physical injury. Many of the colleges and universities do not enforce these for Jewish students. How can they be forced to enforce their own rules?
It's really hard. I have seen now in so many situations the disciplinary proceedings being used against the Jews. It's horrific. And actually, the internal procedures are like star chambers. You're not allowed to have counsel, and the people evaluating your situation are often professors, or in K to 12, principals of other schools. They're employed by the university, the school, or they're part of the haters. Are not impartial at all. It's very, very problematic. And actually, the Deborah Project is developing a paper on this because people are hauled in to answer questions about an incident about which they haven't been told. So you're not, many places, you're not told before you come in for your interview in the investigation what it is you're charged with. That's unbelievable, but is what's happening. So we're going to try and fight that. It's very problematic. And this is just a fight that we have to wage.
Next question, is there any other way we can try to stop material from ever entering the schools? By the time we let the material in, bring a lawsuit, and actually see the lawsuit completed, hundreds of kids are continuing to be indoctrinated.
Yes, that's true. But I don't know how in America you're going to stop it unless everyone who cares about this issue runs for the school board and make sure that people like you and you are on the board, because right now school boards are asleep at the wheel, and this material is getting in and it isn't being stopped. So I do think, I'm a lawyer, so I think the courts are a good way to go because that's my tool. But you bring a few lawsuits And that just bringing them does act as a deterrent. We brought this lawsuit in California, the ethnic studies one against liberated ethnic studies and other bad actors. And while we were waiting for that case to proceed, we filed Public Record Act requests, or FOIA, state FOIA equivalent, with about 70 different school districts asking for materials being used in the classrooms that have to do with Zionism, Israel, Israelis, Palestine. And you're really mad. It really upset a lot of people who were outraged that they have to respond to Open Record Act requests. It's just, yeah, you do. And some school districts were told, and we heard this from district superintendents, they were told, well, you can use the liberated materials if you want, but there are these people on the East Coast in this little law firm, they're going to come after you. And so, you know, it is a deterrent just to bring a case. I don't think it's the only thing that needs to happen. Obviously, education is essential. Everybody on this call who cares about this issue needs to take action of some sort or another, because, as I said, we are in a war and all of us are on the front lines, and it's incumbent on all of us to take action in whatever way we can, because we're losing. They are so far ahead of us. And the United States is not going to be a hospitable place for Jews who are Jewishly conscious and care about Israel. And if we don't fight back and fight back hard.
Next question. Do the private universities have a risk of FARA violations for promoting Islamist propaganda?
Well, let's see. Someone would have to evaluate the FAR. That's a Foreign Agent Registration Act. So, and it applies when someone is considered to be an agent of a foreign government and doesn't register. And I'll give you an example. In a school district, actually lots of school districts, but one in particular that I know of in California, they use a lot of videos from TRT, which is the Turkish radio and television propaganda arm. And TRT had to file as an FAR, foreign agent. They had to register because they are a propaganda arm of the Turkish government. And yet, these school districts are using TRT materials to teach about the Middle East. So it is problematic. You are more aware of it on the college campuses because we know Qatar has just, sunk millions and millions of dollars into support the opportunity to import their indoctrination into the American college campuses. And that is very slowly being sorted out, slowly and carefully now. There are some really, really smart people who are not going to let this go. They are really pulling the threads apart, and it's complicated. And I have faith in them that they will achieve some level of victory in this regard. At least we'll know exactly who is doing what and what the material is and what's being done with it. So, long answer to a complicated question, and I don't know that it's satisfactory, but we're still in process with that, and it's you're right to raise it. It is important.
Okay, and in conjunction with that, somebody asked the question, how can we find out how much foreign money a university is raking in? The case in point is Georgetown University, which some would say is owned by Qatar. Georgetown has not disclosed this information.
Again, well, we do know I think Carnegie Mellon is like the number 2 recipient of foreign funds. There are listings of, I think this is Googleable, uh, how much money is being given to specific universities now. So the general information is out there. It's what's being done with the money, I think, still needs to be worked out as, and who are the conduits? That's still being worked out. But yeah, pulling the string on the money is a big deal, and there's a lot of opposition, obviously, because these colleges get so much money uh, from these bad actors.
I want to apologize to everybody. We're probably not going to get to everybody questions, but we're certainly going to give our best shot. And thank you so much, Laurie, for taking the time. The next question is: my state's K-12 Teachers Union had an anti-Palestinian racism webinar in the spring that included a speaker from Jewish Voice for Speech. During the union's summer conference, there was a workshop on anti-Semitism, a workshop on Islamophobia, and another workshop on Palestinians. The workshop on Palestinians was presented by Jewish Voice for Peace. How does the union influence curriculum?
Oof, there was a lot of material there. First, can you just say the very beginning again? Because I don't think
My state's K-12 Teachers Union had an anti-Palestinian racism webinar in the spring that included a speaker from Jewish Voice for Speech.
Okay, so it's anti-Palestinian racism is, yes, that's a new category we're hearing, just began hearing. I think it started in Canada. Of course, like all bad things, it's spreading quickly. Jewish Voice for Peace, they're right next to Students for Justice in Palestine, and in some ways worse because they're, as a Jew, Jews. Their primary raison d'etre is to demonize the Jewish state and say it, as a Jew, I just want it to be better, but really they want it to be gone. But people who aren't Jewish or aren't focused on this issue, they don't understand. They hear, oh, that's a Jewish organization, we should have them come in. So it's problematic, and that's on all of us to make sure that anywhere they show up, the people who are hosting them are aware of what they really are. And once the institutions that are bringing them in are on notice, then go and publicize the fact that knowingly this school, teachers union, whatever, brought in truly Jew-hating Jews to talk about anti-Semitism or to talk about the hatred of Palestinians. So again, that's on us, and those are things we can do. Everybody can do them.
Is it okay for students to wear pro-Palestinian symbols in the classroom? Can I ask such students to leave or change their clothes?
You have to, I assume this is from a teacher, that is school specific, and there are some schools which will prohibit political speech in the classroom on the part of students. Most should do it on the part of teachers, but some, is a Mogen David, is that political speech? It becomes hard to police. If it's from the river to the sea, if you have a pin that says that, I would argue that's calling for the elimination of the Jewish state. So you have to look at the local board rules and the local code of conduct in that school district, because it's very site specific. It's the best answer I can give you. I know it's not great, but it depends where you are and what those rules are.
Some universities are suspending or banning SJP chapters. How do we help expose SJP for what it is and grow those numbers of bans?
I want to say right now, Brandeis University was, I think, the first university to ban SJP chapter. Hooray! Yay, Brandeis. And I don't know if any others have maintained a ban on SJP. I think some temporarily disbanded them and allowed them back. Rutgers falls in that category. We all just have to keep publicizing what it is that SJP stands for, and more importantly, what it actually does. And as these Title VI lawsuits go through the courts, we can hope that the activity that they engage in will be banned, and therefore they have no purpose anymore. But again, we need to publicize it. We need to hold them accountable. If the university administrators aren't hearing from donors, alumni, parents, they're not going to change anything, because those are screamers. The SJP people are screamers. They will scream and yell and stand outside the building and do a sit-in and do all kinds of, take all kinds of action that's annoying. And no one wants to deal with it. So it's easier to just let them continue. So it's on us again.
How can we stay connected so we know what's happening in K-12 in various states?
Well, I can only tell you about what we're doing, and I'm happy to. I think I know I put my email address in the chat at the very top. So I'm happy to share the information that I have with people if they want that. But I do think it's really important to start close to home and start organizing and create different phalanxes of people who are prepared and able to take certain action and keep each other informed. That's really, really important. What I'd love to see at some point is to have Jewish families united across the country, sharing best practices about how they're beating back the vile anti-Semitism. And I have seen lots and lots of parent chat groups. So there's a beginning of a movement, but we're not yet unified. It's local so far. There's campus reform, there's college fix, there's legal insurrection. These are all websites that will bring you up to date on what's happening across the country. National Review has information about that. Unfortunately, it is largely the conservative press that follows this. That's just a reality. But if you're just focused on K-12 is really hard. We're not getting as much attention, although I think it's really, really critical. Maybe that's something that I'll try and start, or I'll work with some other organizations so we can keep a repository of information about the cases that we're all filing and the results we're having. That's a good idea.
A few last questions, and then the MTA, Massachusetts Teachers Union, recently voted to lobby against the IHRA definition of anti-Semitism in the name of academic freedom. Would it be beneficial for parents to ask their towns to adopt the IHRA definition to counter the union's effort to promote anti-Israel propaganda in K-12?
Yes. Absolutely. Absolutely. Please speak to every elected official join together and pummel these legislators with requests to adopt the IHRA with the examples. The examples are the ones that include the anti-Zionist incidents that would be covered, and call those anti-Zionist actions anti-Semitism. So that's essential. But yes, there all of us should be doing that. It costs nothing, and it needs to happen. Go to the site. There's a IHRA site, and I think they even have a way of requesting that different entities adopt it. It's very, very important. Yes.
All right. Thank you very much, Lori, for a meaningful, educational, and hopeful speech. Many thanks to our community partners tonight. And we had so many for this wonderful presentation. Achavat Torah Congregation Stoughton, CAMRA, CAEF, Canadian Anti-Semitism Educational Foundation, Hadassah Northeast, IBSA, Institute for Black Solidarity with Israel, Jewish NGOs at the UN, Jimena, the Mattathias Project, NGO Monitor, North Carolina Coalition for Israel, RICI, Rhode Island Coalition for Israel, Temple Beth Israel Waltham, Temple Beth Shalom Needham, Temple Beth Shalom Framingham, Temple Beth Tikva Westboro, Temple Emmanuel Newton, Temple Emmeth Chestnut Hill, Temple Israel of Natick, Temple Israel of Sharon, Temple near Tamid of the North Shore. Thank you all so much. So thanks to everyone for attending this session. I want to turn this session now over to Rabbi Carey for a closing prayer.
Avinu shebashamayim tzur Yisrael v'goalo barech et medinat Yisrael reshit smichat gulatenu hagen aleha be'evrat chazdecha ufros aleha sukat shlomecha v'shlach orcha v'amitcha l'rosheha sereh v'yivatzeha v'taknem be'etza tova milfanecha natata shalom ba'aretz v'simchat olam le'yoshveha v'nomar Amen. Heavenly One, protector and redeemer of Israel, bless the state of Israel, which marks the dawning of hope for all who seek peace. Shield it beneath the wings of your love and spread over it the canopy of your peace. Send your light and truth to all who lead and advise, guiding them with your good counsel. Establish peace in the land, fullness of joy for all who dwell there. And we say, everyone, Amen.
Amen. Thank you so much, Rabbi. Thank you, everybody, for attending tonight. A couple of upcoming programs by Mass include Sunday, November 17th. Edwin Black, award-winning author, will be discussing his book, The Farhud, Roots of the Arab-Nazi Alliance and the Holocaust. And then on Thursday, December 12th, Jake Donnelly from the IAC, the Israeli-American Council, will be joining us to discuss combating anti-Semitism on social media. Thank you, everybody. Thank you, Laurie, for a wonderful presentation. Lashana Tova to everybody, and have a great night. Project, a public law firm asserting and defending the civil rights of Jews facing discrimination in education on the K-12 and college campuses throughout the United States. Prior to joining the Deborah Project, Laurie was a journalist covering the Middle East and anti-Semitism in the diaspora for 6 years, and prior to that, she practiced First Amendment law in a major corporate law firm. Laurie has a JD from Harvard Law School, 2 masters from Bryn Mawr College, and a BA from Brandeis University. Mast is pleased to present Laurie